I turned on BBC News last night and was just watching it for half an hour or so, but it was a nice sort of glimpse into the mindset of the UK and the Ukraine hawks. They had guests on that were all saying that, yeah, of course we have to give Ukraine these long-range missiles. It's only fair, it's only right. And there was a lot of emphasis on Russia using and storing North Korean and Iranian missiles. They kept on using this as kind of an argument that, like, well, Russia is having to rely on North Korea and Iran for missiles. Can you talk about the validity of that statement?
Yeah, you've heard that. There just has been no evidence, anything close to substantial evidence that this has happened. It could be, it may be that Iran and North Korea have supplied some missiles to Russia, but we just haven't seen it. And if it is, it's probably maybe even just an agreement to test out their missiles in combat conditions and give them a report. And if in fact they've done that, that's probably the purpose. It's clear that Russia has a very formidable arsenal of missiles. They've been firing their own missiles now for 2.5 years. And I think, those of us who have been following the war since the very beginning back in March, remember that very early on, I remember as early as March 2022, there were media reports that Russia was about to run out of missiles. Clearly, that was false. And you still hear that, but you hear it with less and less frequency. Russia has a formidable arsenal. They don't need Iranian or North Korean missiles. They may have agreed to try them out for them. We don't know that. Even if they did, what does that have to do with it? That's just not the issue here. And this is, I'm sure, in the BBC reports that you saw, and these experts that expounded there, probably none of them talked about the core issue. What it was that Putin was responding to. It's not a question of fairness. It's a question of NATO involvement and NATO participation in war on Russia. That's the whole issue. And I don't know, did any of them bring that up? Did any of them even try to refute that? They just seem to ignore it. They just sidestep it. They just pretend that that's not it. But that's the issue. It's not that Putin's saying, we don't like this, this could hurt us, so stop it. No, it's if you fire these missiles, like, for example, an ATACMS missile into Russian territory, they've accepted, actually the U.S. and the U.K. and France have been launching their missiles, their so-called long-range missiles, into, let's say, post-2014 and, more recently occupied Ukrainian territory, now considered Russian territory by the Russians. Of course, I'm talking about Donetsk and Crimea, Zaporozhia and Kherson. But the Russians have decided to just kind of look the other way on that because they understand that that's disputed territory, internationally. But there's no dispute about, Belgorod and certainly Moscow or anything. This is Russian territory. And if these missiles are fired into that pre-2014 Russian territory, what that means is that NATO is actually attacking Russia because, again, these missiles cannot be fired without direct NATO participation. You need data, from the satellites, but you actually need the technicians to program these missiles, and nobody's actually denied that. It's clear, in fact. Schultz of Germany admitted it. We had that recording of those generals talking about striking the Kerch Bridge. They admitted it, that there were, again, that they had the technicians on the ground, the U.S. and the U.K. firing these missiles. So that's what it would be. It would be a NATO attack. And it's amazing that nobody will talk about it. I mean, it's the media's job to actually inform a public and let them know what the issues are involved. And this is a huge issue because this means that your country is now attacking Russia. Let's talk about that, please.
Yeah, no, the media's job isn't to inform people anymore, it seems like. It's just to frame the narrative. It was clear that these news reports, it was all about getting Ukraine that long-range missile capability. They have to strike back.
Again, we have Lloyd Austin saying that, look, it wouldn't make any difference because they've moved their important air assets out of range of these missiles. So what is it? I mean, it's not going to affect really what's happening on the battlefield. And you're doing this you're bringing in NATO directly. Now, I don't know if the Brits are just so emotionally invested that they just can't think clearly and they don't even understand what they're doing, or if they are deliberately trying to, create a war between NATO and Russia.
Is this a feeling that's mostly just held by the UK political elite, or a lot of the UK population has to be watching BBC? I always trusted BBC as when I was growing up, always as this was the definitive, informative international news source. It was the BBC. It was the pinnacle. And I wonder if its reputation has been tarnished as much as U.S. media in terms of CNN and the New York Times. Is it the same situation?
Yeah, I think it's very much the same. It's been tarnished for anybody who's really paying attention and trying to get, a grasp of the objective reality. It's certainly been tarnished by the reporting on Gaza. And it's just been terribly, terribly lopsided, of course, on the Ukraine war, just as bad as, if not worse, than the U.S. media outlets.
Do most people in the UK have seen through that and realize that this concept of fake news?
My understanding is that, the situation really is grimmer in the UK. You have more dissent in the U.S., more awareness, but just in general. I don't think there's no real popular support for this war in Ukraine, but most people think that their government is telling them the truth. They may not. I think if you ask them, like, what are the issues that concern you, they're going to put something like, they're going to put economic issues first, and Ukraine is going to be way down the list. Among the elites, and BBC really reflects elite opinion. It just seems to be Ukraine's at the top of the list. It's an elite obsession, very much like in the U.S., but I think they just more extreme.